But for people that haven't seen the video, Emil sent Story of Two Worlds.
That was actually just a month ago, so beginning of January. So it was in 2023, yeah.
Watch that video. That video is just like, 30 minutes of just pure hype. It's so much fun. And I was like, he fucking did it. He actually did it. Like this guy who started climbing at 16 years old. Yeah. So anyway, congrats. Such a massive accomplishment. That's a totally historic climb. It looks beautiful. And yeah, I was just so excited to see that pop up on your channel.
Thanks, man. Yeah. It was one of my more memorable ascents. I will admit, Power of Now had kind of a deeper impact because it was just so freaking out of nowhere. Yeah. Story, I was approaching it steadily. Like I could feel it. I just needed the day kind of. But Power of Now was just like last day, had a tarp over the boulder because it was like, piss pouring rain. And yeah, then I accidentally made it up it. But aside from that, I think it's my second most. Yeah, I mean, it really felt that way.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I think it's my second favorite ascent of all time. And I was like, so psyched when I got up it.
Yeah.
But it was mostly, awesome. Actually, the funny thing about it is that it wasn't so much about the actual ascent of the climb that meant so much to me. Of Story of Two Worlds, sorry. Like doing that climb was kind of definitely a new milestone in my climbing, and I will for sure admit that it was extremely special, but it was more like a testament to how I've been progressing over the past couple of months, because I completely changed my perspective on training and like how to become stronger as a climber. And I guess in a kind of controversial way for a lot of people, at least for myself. So I gained a total of 6 kilograms, which is like 15 pounds, I guess.
Yeah.
And felt, lighter than I ever had before.
Yeah.
Which
so excited to talk about this.
Yeah.
Really, I am. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's take it from the top. So you know how like climbing is obviously a sport that's quite driven by weight to an extent. And over the years, it's proven more and more that like you don't have to be light to climb hard. It's not being lighter that's the key. But I guess for me, even though I've known that for years, it's always been like, well, yes, you don't have to necessarily be light, but you have to be lighter and lighter is what I've always kind of thought. So my kind of like average weight has always been like 76, 77. And if, I eat more sweets or like if I do stuff in general, like just train more, eat more, I gain a little bit of weight. And then I've always tried to kind of reduce that slowly. Like, oh, I'm 78, 79. I'll try and like cut down a little bit on some snacks and like cut down a little bit on this and that to just come down to my performance weight, which is what I viewed it as, that 76, 77 kilograms. Because when I quickly gain to 79 or so, it's like, oh, I feel heavier, which I guess makes sense to a degree. But the thing is, I think I haven't really allowed my body for years to just be what it is and like actually thrive. I haven't had a eating disorder or anything like that, but I definitely haven't like, I've definitely cared about weight to a degree. I've always considered it like, had maybe weigh myself once a week, every other week, and just like, oh, I'm a little bit heavier. I'll just, consider this for a while. And that's been pretty ingrained into my view on myself as a climber. I would never recommend anybody else to like try and get lighter to achieve their goals, because I think for a lot of people it's about getting heavier. But I've also always been a slightly heavier climber compared to many of the people that I climb with, and like people who do V13s and stuff. So I always thought like, oh yeah, I mean, if you're 70, that's fine. 70 kilograms is, you don't have to consider it. But if you get above 75, you do need to start like trying getting it down, because I was thinking there was some sort of absolute value to how much you can weigh. Like if you're above 85, maybe you can't perform anymore. But I have a lot of reasons not to think that, and now they're more than ever like that, I guess. So to circle back to, I guess, what became the cutoff point was like, I had this competition and I felt like really weak. I performed really terribly and I just basically couldn't climb very well. So I was like, okay, I want to change everything about my climbing in the coming months and just see what can I do anything to revolutionize how I climb and how I move on the wall and how I feel. I was like, well, I've done basically everything by now. I've done my like 2 hangs, I've done max hangs, I've done endurance training, I've done power training. I've touched on every single way of training so far, but I've never really like accepted whatever weight happens. Like I've never just I guess like fully fueled myself and like taking creatine or done any of that type of stuff. And so for the first part of the fall, around September, I was like, I'll eat whatever the heck I want to just gain weight, and I'll take creatine to gain the water weight, and I'll feel like a sludge on the wall, and then just train like a madman with that extra weight that comes from the creatine plus the food. And then I'll kind of shred that down a little bit slowly as the season progresses. So, I mean, it did not take long to gain a lot of weight. I think I gained like 5 kilograms in a month or so. From like middle of September until middle of October. I went from 76 kilograms to 81, which is again like 10, 11 pounds or so. And for the first few weeks, I felt pretty bad on the wall. I'll admit, like I did not feel very strong. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm going to Ticino soon. Like, this is not a good strategy. I will not be able to reduce my weight. I'll be like heavy and sluggish and it'll be tough to climb. But I decided like I'm going to stick with this process and I'm going to trust this process, and just because I had a lot of reasons to trust it. The idea behind it was to gain a lot of weight from creatine and muscles and just energy exertion, or like with just building more muscle, and then I'll cut that off as the season progresses. So that was the original plan. But then what happened was I kind of kept on gaining weight, and when because I also stopped taking creatine and started eating a little bit more healthy, I guess, like not as calorie full. So more like, I guess I had more of a maintenance level, not really a deficit, but before that I was at a surplus anyways. And I was like, okay, now I'll start dropping weight. But then I just kind of didn't. But what happened was that I just started to feel stronger and stronger and stronger because I could just pull so much more. And it's hard to say exactly why I was starting to feel so much physically stronger. I can't like pinpoint, say this is the exact thing that I did. But I guess just liberating the idea of weight and just pushing with whatever my body wants was a very good approach to just get physically stronger. And so sometime in the middle of November, end of November-ish, I started doing some benchmarks testing, and I was like so much stronger at physical benchmarks than I've ever been before. And coupled with this was also that because of this strength increase, I also had a lot more control on the wall. So whenever I was doing any form of climbing, it would be not as like sloppy or sluggish. It would be just in pure control, or at least to the extent that I could. And so every session I was becoming a better climber because I was consistently stronger. And I was also getting like physically stronger at the same time. So everything was kind of leveling up, So that's kind of how things went. It was like creatine, food, and a lot of physical, powerful training. So yeah, that's I guess the summary of my transition to become a better climber.